distinguished guests, David, President of the Assyrian Australian National Federation, together with Nicholas, Ninos, and Meir. Welcome. Friends. As President of the Sephardi Synagogue, I welcome you all and thank you sincerely for coming to commemorate this important anniversary with us. The Farhud, the massacre of Jews in Baghdad on 1 and 2 June 1941, in the midst of World War II, which was preceded by the sack of Basra on 7 and 8 May 1941. These events were inspired and instigated by Nazi propagandists and carried out by Iraqi soldiers and ordinary Arabs who had adopted hatred, even envy, of Jews who were prominent in Iraq at the time. It was, in fact, an episode in the Nazi plan for the extermination of Jews wherever they were, which was a feature of Nazi policy during the war. Until then, Iraqi Jews, whose language was Arabic, felt strongly connected to the land of their birth, a land in which they had lived for over 2,500 years, a land of which they were fiercely proud. All this changed when they found themselves the victims of these vicious, murderous attacks. Sadly, what we saw happen to Iraqi Jews in 1941, we see today with other minorities. The Jews of Iraq have all but disappeared. Today, we find other minority groups, Assyrians, Yazidis, Mandians, bearing the brunt of murderous attacks by their neighbors. And like the Jews before them, seeking to flee as refugees if they can escape the country. While none of these minorities is safe, even Muslim communities have been affected by sectarian hatred and groups such as ISIS, who have been willing to kill fellow Muslims as well as members of the minority communities. This is the 76th anniversary of the Farhud, yet it is only in the past few years that the significance of the event and the impact it had on the Jews from Iraq had been recognized by Israel and the world at large. For decades, Holocaust museums ignored this tragedy, though now that's changing. In 2015, at a ceremony in the United Nations building, 1 June was declared International Farhud Day to be commemorated each year. We are holding our commemoration a few days early, as this year, the festival of Shavuot, Eid is Ziyara, in Iraqi Arabic, falls on that day. Also, in 2015, the German and Israel governments acknowledged the Nazi role in the Farhud and offered some mere compensation to Jews now living in Israel who were in Iraq at that time. More importantly, they have also been given the right to free medication, which as people age is a valuable development. As we recall the Farhud and the fact that many Iraqis turned against their Jewish fellow citizens, we must also acknowledge that many brave Iraqi Muslims were prepared to stand up to protect their Jewish friends and neighbors. Without their efforts, the loss of life, as bad as it was, would have been even more terrible. If names are known, we should be recommending to Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Authority in Israel, that such people should be acknowledged as righteous among the nations and trees planted in their honor. Thank you all, and I'll now pass you all over to our Master of Ceremonies, Dr. Myer Samra.
And thank you all for being here, all of you today. The Jews have had a long, continuous history in Iraq, from the time of Nebuchadnezzar, who took captives from Jerusalem there in 597 and 586 BCE. In Baghdad particularly, they played an important role in the life of the city. In the first half of the 20th century, Jews accounted for perhaps a third of the city's population and were the largest of four faith communities in Baghdad, the other three being Shia Muslims, Sunni Muslims, and Christians. Many Jews were merchants, and they were extensively involved in international trade, particularly as substantial daughter colonies had established themselves across the British Empire and exported goods from across the globe to their kinsmen in Iraq. Most musicians in the country were Jews, while Jews and Christians had been receptive to Western modern education, which entered the region in the mid-19th century, giving them opportunities to enter the professions and to serve in government administration more than the Muslim population. Iraq was ruled by Britain under a mandate from the League of Nations between 1922 to 1932 and installed the Hashemite prince Faisal of the Hijaz as king. Many Jews and Christians were employed by the British thanks to the fact that they had studied in French and English and had a more advanced educational base than their Muslim compatriots. In 1932, Iraq was granted independence with a treaty that gave many privileges to the British, including the retention of military bases, access to Iraq's rich oil fields, and special privileges under the legal system. I should mention, as we do have Assyrian members of here with us, that in fact, as soon as Iraq attained its independence, there was an attack on the Assyrian community. 1933, yeah. So,
1 year after actually independence.
Yeah, thank you. 1 year after the independence. Yeah. Yeah. So, minorities unfortunately haven't fared too well in Iraq from that time. Anyway, at the time, many Arab nationalists resented British domination of the country and turned to Germany for support, while the royal family relied on Britain to maintain their role in the country. The German ambassador, Dr. Fritz Grober, had been spreading anti-Semitic propaganda since Hitler's rise to power, and though he was expelled at the start of World War II, the propaganda continued thanks to the efforts of his protégés and the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Haj Amin al-Husseini, who arrived in Iraq in 1939, having fled Palestine, where the British authorities were after him for inciting attacks on the British and the Jews. He helped foment anti-Jewish feeling in Iraq by equating the Jews there with those in Palestine who were working to establish a Jewish homeland. Even though the Iraqi Jewish leadership were avowedly anti-Zionist in their orientation and saw their future as being in Iraq, on the 1st of April 1941, a military coup toppled the parliamentary government of Prime Minister Nouri Saeed and brought the pro-Nazi, anti-Semitic Rashid Ali al-Gailani to power. He re-established diplomatic ties with Germany and sought to force the British military out of the country. Dr. Grober re-established himself and his propaganda machine, seeking to build support and sympathy for the Nazi regime, hatred for Britain and the Jews of Iraq, and the Mufti also agitated strongly for support for Hitler and attacks on Iraqi Jews who were portrayed as plotting with the British against the Arab nation. Rashid Ali ordered the British to vacate their Air Force base in Habaniya and sought to replace them with Germans and to offer Iraq's oil to the Germans. Battles ensued, with Vichy France shipping a large quantity of weapons and ammunition, while Germany sent 29 and Italy 12 fighter planes to attack the British bases and to support the Iraqi regime. At the same time, the regime was taking measures against the Jews. The doors of Jewish homes were daubed with red handprints, making them stand out and easily identifiable, and days prior to the Farhud, the governor of Baghdad ordered the chief rabbi to tell the Jews to pack provisions for a 3-day journey, reminiscent of what Jews in Europe were directed to do before being sent to their death. The British overpowered the Iraqi forces, and the support of the Axis powers proved relatively ineffectual for Rashid Ali and his regime. By 31 May 1941, the British had taken control of the country, while Rashid Ali, the coup leaders, and Haj Amin al-Husseini had fled. And the British were stationed across the river. The British stationed themselves across the river in Tigris, west of Baghdad, and did not enter the city itself, although they were able to see, to hear the screams and all that was happening within. The following day, that's the first day of the Jewish festival of Eid al-Ziyarah, or the pilgrimage festival of Shavuot in Hebrew, was the 1st of June, and the Jews were dressed in their finery, in their fine clothes for the festival. Some began to cross the bridge to the other side of the Tigris, intending to welcome back Prince Abdullah, the regent of the country. The king Faisal II was in fact only a little boy at the time, so Abdullah was in his place. So Abdullah was helped by the British to reclaim his role as effectively the head of the government. The Jews on the bridge were met by Iraqi soldiers fleeing from the British forces. Seeing the Jews dressed in their fine clothes, they believing that the Jews were in league with the British, thinking that they were celebrating the return of the British, the soldiers slaughtered the Jews they encountered on the bridge and continued killing any Jew they found on the streets inside Baghdad itself, shouting for death to the Jews. Soon the members of two militaristic pro-Nazi youth groups, Al-Futuwa and the Kataib al-Shabab, heeded the call and joined in the massacre, as did many ordinary citizens. The killings spread from the streets to Jewish homes, and Jewish businesses were destroyed, their property looted. Many Jews sought to barricade themselves in their homes or to fight back from their rooftops, with people also trying to jump from one roof to another to escape. Others were fortunate to find shelter from Arab friends and neighbours who hid them or stood guard against the marauders. All the while, the British troops looked on, without taking any steps to protect the Jews from the slaughter. Prime Minister Winston Churchill ordered the British troops to move in to stop the slaughter, but for some reason, Ambassador Kinahan Cornwallis chose to ignore the order. He dined regally and played golf while the screams and the shouting were ringing in the background. One can speculate that he did not wish to alienate the Arab population further by seeming to support a vulnerable and now unpopular minority group. Or perhaps he was concerned about the symbolism of the colonial power stepping back in to take the capital city and wanted the regent to be the one to be seen restoring order. The carnage continued on to the 2nd of June, but now people from outside of the city who had heard of what was happening came to Baghdad to join in the looting. Later that day, Prince Abdullah returned to Baghdad with his loyal troops and restored order. He warned that anyone found looting would be shot, and many were killed before the attacks on the Jews had ended. Subsequently, some of the chief instigators of the Farhud were tried and hanged. Just how many Jews had been killed during the rampage over the 2 days is not known for certain, with estimates ranging from around 180 to 600 and even 900. The Jews were not given the opportunity to bury their dead in accordance with Jewish rites. Instead, the dead were gathered together and placed into a mass grave, which is depicted on the photograph that you see on the other side of the pamphlet that you have before you for today's program. Thousands of people were injured, and the damage caused to Jewish property reached what at the time seemed astronomical figures. The government of Nuri Said sought to reassure the Jews that the Farhud was an aberration and nothing like it could happen again, that they were safe in Iraq. And certainly, normalcy seemed to return, and the Jews went back to their daily lives. But something fundamental had changed. The sense of certainty about their place in Iraqi society had dissipated, and Zionism became a more attractive possibility, particularly among the youth, many of whom joined a clandestine Zionist youth group, where they learnt Hebrew and trained to use weapons to defend themselves should the need arise. Unfortunately, normalcy lasted but very briefly. Following the UN vote for the partition of Palestine, riots broke out targeting the Jews. The following year, Israel declared its independence, and the position of Jews quickly became untenable across the Arab world. From an estimated population of 250,000 Jews in Iraq at the beginning of the 20th century, by 1950 it had dwindled to around 130,000. Today, there is no Jewish community left in Iraq. Officially, there are 5 Jews in the country. There may be some others scattered around, living as Muslims or as Christians to avoid detection. So hated have the Jews become in the land where they had lived and flourished for over 2,500 years. It is a tragedy for Jews to have been forced out of a land which has been at the center of Jewish life for so long. A land which connects to biblical history, where the synagogue was invented and where the Babylonian Talmud was set down. And while the Iraqi population today may not realize it, it is a tragedy that it has lost an important element of its population, along with the diversity which enlivens a successful society. Thank you. A number of members of our community here have relatives who were murdered in the Farhud.
Hello and welcome everybody, and thank you for changing your plan to come here tonight. You can't believe it, I changed my plan too, because it was very important to me to come here tonight. It would still be good if you listen and not fall asleep. Some part of my speech new. Most of you know me, but some of you don't know me. So I introduce myself. I am Ilana Zuleika, and I was born in Baghdad. In Baghdad, they used to call me Helen Rabia, Mishpahat Rabia. My surname, Spring. I live with my parent, grandparent, my 2 uncles in a huge house. From the 3 family, there were only 25 children growing up together in that big house, and one of them, that was me. I would like to mention to you a little about my childhood experience in Baghdad before the horrible time of the Farhud. I grew up in a religious house, fully celebrating the Hagim in a very traditional way. Shabbat dinner, the highlight of the week, was superb variety of food cooked by the woman of the house, beating Master Chef of Sydney anytime. The entire family would gather together in one big room for Shabbat dinner meal. And after the dinner, we would sing the Barchat Mazon and the beautiful Zemirot sang by young and old. For Shabbat lunch, the smell and taste of the hamim was amazing. And I haven't had something as good since then.
Come to me.
I want to thank the Sephardi synagogue for inviting the congregation for their hamim that attract lots of people like a wedding. It was. Will be nice to learn how to make Australian hamim in the future. Yeah. These days, people don't have the patience or the time to make such a delicacy. During the summer, I remember we would go to the Tigris River, the Hiddekel. The family would pack a picnic dinner, and we would go to a small island in the middle of the river in a boat. We would enjoy the cool breeze and the beautiful atmosphere, singing songs, some of the family playing traditional Iraqi instrument. It was beautiful. Fortunately, most of the family was quite well off. And we've been spoiled in the Hagim, in Purim, Mishluach Manot, giving us reward in a small little money that we ran to spend. It was something very special. And especially in Rosh Hashanah, spoiled with a new dress and piece of jewelry, could be gold ring, bracelet, or chain, but has to be something new for real. The reason I am here tonight to speak about my grandfather, my mother's father. His name was Salman Gangana. You can see him in the photo here tonight. I remember him as a handsome, well-built man with a serious personality, usually wearing a gray and white garment with stripe. On his head, he wore a red hat. He was a healthy man, not needing reading glasses like me, but he did walk with the aid of a walking stick. I am happy to say that he only used his stick for walking, never used it to spank his grandchildren. His daily routine started by praying at the shul, which was not far from the house. After breakfast, he went to work from the house directly to the factory, which also was not far at all. He and my two uncles was owning a big factory producing mainly sesame oil and tahini. The factory adjoined with the house, so my grandfather really didn't have far to commute. He did the easier job of greeting customers and collecting the money like a cashier. I don't know where he put the money, but there were no cash register in those days. But I remember he had big pocket in the garment. My grandfather had an easy life free from the tension of modern days, no hassle of driving, finding parking, or rushing to work. My two uncles dealt with the more serious part, dealing with worker, staff, supplier, and running a factory, as you know, producing, as I said before, producing sesame oil and tahini. My son Ronnie liked to joke to say that my great-grandfather used to sell oil to the Arab in Iraq. The sesame was washed and put on the roof to dry, and then roasted in a big oven. My sister-in-law Julie recently said to me that the smell of the roasted sesame in the factory was divine. To crush the sesame seed and turn it into oil, the factory had a big grinder which was turned with the aid of horses. The horses were blindfolded and went round and round to drive the big wheel. There were spare horses, alternative between them like shift work. The horses help with sesame oil production only, and I never saw anyone in the family ride them, not even my grandfather. As a young girl, I wasn't aware at all of serious problem between Arab and Jews. As a matter of fact, another wealthy man would even offer the family his plantation to use like a holiday place. Was very, very nice. Before the Farhud, my immediate family had moved to a new area, a new house built by my father with the help of Arab worker. But my grandparent and uncle and all my cousins continued to live in the big house till the Farhud. An Arab friend of the family knew that trouble was on the doorstep for Jews, came to my grandparents' house to take the entire family to his home, protecting them from any harm. Unfortunately, my grandfather did not join the others, preferred to stay at home, busy praying and reading Tehillim because it was Shavuot. We learned afterwards that an Arab dressed in uniform managed to enter the house, search all over the place, in the factory, in the house, find no one except till he find my poor grandfather. We believe he demanded money and being Shavuot, my grandfather refused, offering instead to give him money the following day. This did not suit the bad man. He had a rifle on his hand. He shot and killed my grandfather on the spot.
Appears on the list of those killed during the rioting in Baghdad was my mother's first cousin. He worked as a typewriter repairer, and my mother was very fond of him. He happened to be walking on the street on the 1st of June 1941 when he crossed the path of rioters, screaming out, "Izbahu il-Yahud," slaughter the Jews. He was stabbed to death. His crime that he was a Jew who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Salah's mother, Gajii, was also attacked that day and had her belly slashed, but fortunately she managed to survive. The events of that time had an indelible impact on my mother and left her fearful for years to come. She herself had been menaced in the weeks before the event and developed anxiety about speaking English, even after migrating to Australia. She had been a student of an American-run girls' school, and when the Rashid Ali regime seized power, she was imprisoned briefly until her father, a prominent merchant, was able to persuade the authorities to release her. Years later, when I was born in Australia, close to the 18th anniversary of the Farhud, her cousin Salah appeared to her, large as life, standing at the foot of the bed, and Mum spoke to him. Mum insisted this was not a dream. She really felt he was there with her in the room. My parents had already chosen the name Shaul for me, but as Salah had appeared to her, she felt she had to give me the name Salah as well. In our community, Salah is anglicised as Charles. I've carried both names to this day.
Born on the 11th of May 1910, who was murdered during the Farhud. His name does not appear on the list prepared by Dr. Zvi Yehuda. Dad's family, his parents and siblings, had emigrated from Iraq and settled in Singapore. Elias was back in Baghdad to get married. Sadly, the wedding never eventuated. Elias was stabbed to death during the riots on the 1st of June 1941 while waiting at a bus stop. Although he may have been living overseas, clearly he was still recognizable as a Jew when the mob came by. My brother Elias was so named in my uncle's memory. Sadly, Elias passed away a year ago. I light this candle in the memory of my uncle Elias and in memory of all the other victims of the Farhud who did not receive a proper burial.
Biba Abdu of Zbeda family, Shua Abdu. Shua Abdu, Ezra Abraham, Nini, wife of Shimun Abu al-Fiyuza, sister of Shimun Abu al-Fiyuza, Naima Murduk Abu al-Maskhin, Ishaq Abraham Abu al-Nuga, Yaqub Shim Abu al-Nuga, Misuda, daughter of Abu al-Pacha, daughter of Misuda, daughter of Abu al-Pacha, son of Misuda, daughter of Abu al-Pacha, Aziza, daughter of Abu al-Samak, Meir Aghaba, Abraham Eliyahu Ajmi, Ezra Mushiach Ajmi, Yaqub Eliyahu Ani, Hiskel al-Araj, Abud Ezra Asfig, Ishaq Salim Asher, Abdullah Nisim Aslan, Salih Abraham Aslan, Silman Eliyahu Baruch Batat, Rosa Bey, Silman Hiskel Hangana, Ishaq Chico, Shmuel Dahud Cohen, Rahamim Eliyahu Dabi, Regina Menashe Dabi, Salim Dabi, Abraham Dahud, Ishaq Yosef Hiskel Baruch Dangur, Salim Sion Dangur, Dahud Daniel, Katun Hineni Dayan, Naim Ruben Deborah, Moshe Shaul Dihan, Salih Eliyahu Dihan, Abdallah Nisim Delal, Bettina Delal, daughter of Kehela Hiskel Horesh, daughter of Sion Jamal Delal, Kehela Delal, daughter of Hesek Horesh, Sasun Jam'a Delal, Yaqub Nisim Delal, Salha Ephraim, Dahud Ezer, Naim Shaul Fakiru, Silman Gurji, Abraham Ishaq Habsha, Yaqub Ishaq Habsha, Farha Hagala, Mazli, daughter of Haguli, daughter of Halima, son of Halima, Rahamim Eliyahu Hami, Sali Abraham Hardun, wife of Hiskel, daughter of Hakam Baruch, Haron Hayim Ezra Hidad, Abraham Hiskeh Hilai, Hindawi Farha, daughter of Kehela Hiskel Horesh, Simcha Abdul Horesh, mother of Kehela Dilal, daughter of Ibn Gibriel, Hiskel Itag, Ephraim Abraham Itag, Nisim Yamin Silam Itag, Ezra Eliyahu Juri, Moshe Janabi, Haron Abraham Kashi, Abid Eliyahu Kedunchi, Sion Khalifa, Abdallah Nisim Hibaza, Yaakov Nisim Hibaza, Baruch Hiyat, Eliyahu Sion Hiyat, Ishak Abraham Clef, Meir Abraham Clef, Hiskel Kima, Kunduri Baruch Louis, Hiskel Silman Ma'alim, Salah Mashal, Esteg Madalal, Misuda Michael, Milo. Gurji Mislawi, Hiskel Manashi Mislawi, Eliyahu Mizala, Ezra Abraham Mizala, Yaqub Dahud Misafi, Naim Murduk, Nahum Shaul Nahum, Rosa Moshe Nahum, Mitana Salah Nijaj, Simcha wife of Dahud Nikash, Meir Abraham Nizar, Ishak Shaul Pasha, Abdallah Kashush, Hineni Ezra Kig, wife of Sasun Shimun, Isaac Moshi Kir, Nahum Yosef Kizaz, Eliyahu Dahud Rahim, Farha Sali, Esteg Samra, wife of Moshi Halima, Hiskel Samra, wife of Eliyahu Samra, Farid Sasun, Hiyum Shimun Sasun, Moshi Shimun Hiyim Shimun Sasun. I'm breaking my teeth, I'm sorry. Sali Shimun Hiyum Shimun Sasun, Shimun Hiyum Shimun Sasun. Farha, daughter of Menachem Dahud Shimash, Iman Moshe Ishak Hiyim Shimash. Marcel Shimash, Yaqub Shimun, Eliyahu Shina. Ezra Abraham Shina, Ezra Abraham Dahud Shlomo, Bidur Shua, Meir Shua Shukur, Ephraim Simantob, Misuda Simantob, Berta Sion, Salha Sion, Yosef Abraham Sit Al-Kul, Hiyahi Menashe Siti, Salim Sofer, Hiskel Sweri, Shimun Abraham Sweri, Hiskel Abraham Twaina. Coming to the end. Rima Dahud Tutunchi, Eliyahu Sion Yahya, Latifa Yaqub, Menachem Yaqub, Abd Eliyahu Al Yatim, Abraham Moshi Al Yatim, Menachem Yehuda, Ezra Yosef, Khatun, daughter of Yosef, Salha Yosef, outside of Baghdad. Sason Pinchas, Jim Ahilu, Sandur. Hacham Moshe Mazi, Sandur. Shabtai Abraham Mazi, Yosef Nahum, Farouk Sasun, Menashe Ezra Kalashi, Yosef Abraham Siddiq, killed on his way to Samawa. Thank you.
מכתב לדוד, שומרני אל כי חסיתי בך. אמרת לאדוני, אדוני אתה טובתי בנעליך, לקדושים אשר בארץ המה ואדיר כל חפצי בם. ירבו עצבותם אחר מהר ובנסיך נזקיהם מדם ובנשאת שמותם. על שפתי אדוני מנת חלקי וחוסי, אתה תומך גורלי, הבלים נפלו לי בנעימים, אף נחלת שפרה עלי. אברך את אדוני אשר יעצני, אף לילות צירו נחליותי. שיביתי אדוני לנגדי תמיד, כי ממני בא למות לכן. שמח ליבי ויגל כבודי, אף בשרי ישכון לבטח, כי לא תעזוב נפשי לשאול, לא תיתן חסידך לראות שחת. תודייני אור החיים, סוב השמחות את פניך, נעימות בימינך נצח. יושב בסתר עליון, בצל שדי תלונן, אומר אל אדוני מחסי ומצודתי, אלוהי אפתח בו, כי הוא יצילך מפח יקוש, מדבר אבות, בעברתו יסך לך, ותחת כנפיו תחסה, צנעה וסוחרה מיתו, לא תירא מפחד לילה, מחץ יעוף יומם, מדבר באופל יהלוך, מכתב ישות הצהריים, יפול מצדך 1000, ורבבה מימינך, אליך לא ייגש, רק בעיניך תביט, ושרומת רשעים תראה, כי אתה אדוני מחסי, עליון שמת מעונך, לא תאונה לך רע, ונגע לא יקרא באהליך, כי מלאכיו יצו אלך לשמורך בכל דרכיך, על כפיים ישאונך, פן תיגוף באבן רגליך, על שחל ופתן תדרוך, תרמוס כפיר ותנין, כבי חשק ואפלתהו, עשה גבהו כי ידע שמי יקראנו עיניהמו, אנוכי בצרה חלצה וכבדהו, אורך ימים, אז ביאהו ועדהו בשועתי. מנוחה נכונה בישיבה עליונה. I'd like to ask everybody to please rise if they can. במעלת קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מירים ומזהירים, אם ישרים ופניהם כלובל לבנת הספירים, בחילוץ הצמים וחברת השמים, ברחקת פשע וקרבת ישע, בחמלה וחנינה מלפני שוכן מעונה, בחולקת הבא לחמלם הבא, שם תאמנת ומחיצת נפשות הנשים והנשים, חללי הפרהוד יתפטרו מן עלמדן, כרות אלהנה מרד שמאיה ורע בכל חילהון. המלך ברחמיו ימתיק מלכותו עליהם, המלך ברחמיו יגלה יסודו עליהם, המלך ברחמיו יפרוס סודו ודורו עליהם, המלך ברחמיו ינעים ניצחו עליהם, המלך ברחמיו יפאר תפארתו עליהם, המלך יושב כיסא רחמים בכוח חסדיו הגדולים, יכניסם בסתר כנפיו ובסתר החלו, לחזות בנו אדוני ולבקר בהיכלו, ולקץ הימין יעמידם ומנחל אדוניו ישכם, בצרור החיים נשמתם, וישים כבוד מנוחתם, וילווה להם השלום, ועל משכבם יהיה שלום, כי לכתיב יבוא שלום, ינוח משכבותם, הולך נכוחו, הם בכל שוכבי עמו ישראל, בכלל הרחמים והסליחות, והנחמות והישועות ואמרו אמן.
Amen.
May there be rest in a abode on high, under the wings of the divine presence, on a level with the holy and pure, like the radiance of the sky illuminate and shine with the upright, their faces resplendent with the brilliance of sapphires, strengthening of self, forgiveness of transgressions, distancing of sin, drawing near of salvation, compassion and grace from before him, the rock who dwells on high, and a good share in the life of the world to come. There shall be the portion, location of the souls of the men and women who have passed away during the tragedy of the pogrom of Farhud, that they have left this world in accordance with the will master of heaven and earth. May the King in his mercy sweeten his kingdom upon them. May the King in his mercy reveal his foundation upon them. May the King in his mercy spread his glory and splendor upon them. May the King in his mercy make pleasant his eternity upon them. May the King in his mercy glorify his beauty upon them. The King who sits upon the throne of mercy with the power of great kindness, in the shade of his wings, and in the refuge of his tent, so as to behold the pleasantness of God and dwell within his sanctuary. At the end of days may he arouse them, and from the stream of his delights may he give them to drink, and may he bind their souls in the bond of life, and may he make their rest honorable. God is their heritage, and may there be peace cleave to them, and upon their resting place may there be peace, as is written, he shall come in peace, so shall lie peacefully upon the resting place. Those who walk in his righteous paths, they and all the sons of Israel who lie with them, included in compassion and forgiveness and salvation, and let us say Amen.
Amen.
יהי ברק רעותה והמליך מלכותה והצמח פורקנה ויקרב מיכה. אמן. לך יכול ובנכון כדכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. אמן. יהיה שומר אדם וברך לעולם לעלמי עלמי יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתחמם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל. שמר וקודשה אבריחו. אמן. כל ברכתה שירתה את פחתה ומחמתה ואמירן בעלמא ויאמרו אמן. אמן. על ישראל ועל רבנן ועל תלמידון ועל כל תלמידי תלמידון ועוסקים באורייתא קדישא. די באתר הדין ודי בכל אתר ואתר ילנה ולהון ולכל תחינה וחסדה ורחמי. מן קדם והרשמה והרעה ויאמרו אמן. אמן. יהיה שלמה רבה וישמע חיים ושבע וישועה ונחמה וזבה ורפואה וגאולה וסליחה וכפרה. ורווח והצלה לנו חומו ישראל במאומן. ויהיה שלום במרומיו וברחמיו ושלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל במרו אמן. אמן.
To think of the Holocaust essentially as a calamity for the Jews of Europe, Nazi Germany in fact endorsed the liquidation of Jewish communities across North Africa and the Middle East. Before the war, the Nazis had encouraged Jews to leave Europe and settle in Palestine. However, once the war had commenced, whether because they were responding to Arab entreaties or because they felt they would soon be taking control of the region, their policies changed. Much of North Africa, from Morocco to Libya, eventually came under German control during World War II, leading to the rounding up of Jews in various locations, and some were sent to concentration and death camps in Europe. Einsatzgruppen were SS death squads set up across Europe principally to perform the special task of wiping out the Jews. In this they were quite efficient, at first shooting these enemies of the state, often getting Jews to dig trenches where they would be shot and buried. They were also able to encourage locals and other sections of the Nazi military to assist them in this work, to participate in such matters. Over time they progressed from shooting to gas chambers to achieve their mission, because shooting was apparently inefficient and too costly. In North Africa, the Nazis formed a battalion called Einsatzgruppe Tunis to deal with the Jews in that region. In that context, the Farhud was not an isolated aberration. It was fermented in a combination of Nazi propaganda and incitement by Arab leaders who were incensed by the prospect of a Jewish homeland in Palestine and treated all Jews, even if they vehemently opposed Zionism, as many of their leaders in Iraq did, as somehow to blame for this encroachment on Arab territory. The work of two people in particular fanned the hatred of Jews that was spreading in Iraq. The first was Dr. Fritz Grober, the German ambassador to Iraq in 1932, and the second was the Mufti of Jerusalem, Hajj Muhammad Amin al-Husseini. Dr. Grober brought up one of the leading newspapers in Baghdad, Al-Arabi, the Arab World, and used it from the beginning as a vehicle to create admiration for fascism, sympathy for the Nazi regime, and anti-Semitism. Grober had Mein Kampf translated into Arabic, serialized in the newspaper, judiciously editing out Hitler's views on the Arabs, who, as racially inferior Semites and at best lacquered half-apes, he held in contempt. The paper regularly fabricated and reported on Jewish atrocities against Arabs in Palestine, helping to fuel anger against Jews in Iraq. Grober cultivated 4 anti-British army commanders, known as the Golden Square, encouraging them to visit Germany and absorb Nazi values. He was also instrumental in having Radio Berlin broadcast in Arabic, a further channel for Nazi propaganda to infiltrate Iraq and the rest of the Arab world. The Mufti had long opposed Jewish settlement in Palestine and incited attacks on the British Mandate administration and against Jews there. He also used his position to encourage hatred of Jews among Muslims across the globe, spreading a claim that they were desecrating the Haram esh-Sharif, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, by seeking to pray at the Western Wall. His efforts led to the perpetration of various massacres, including the 1929 destruction of the Jewish community in Hebron, which had been there from time immemorial. When the British sought to arrest him, al-Husseini initially retreated to the sanctuary of the Haram al-Sharif, where he continued his provocations before fleeing to Lebanon in 1937. By 1939, as the French authorities were becoming tired of his incitement, he fled again to Iraq, where he worked closely with Dr. Grober and the Golden Square commanders that Grober had cultivated. Here his propaganda flourished unchecked. He wrote to Hitler expressing his admiration for how the Nazis were dealing with the Jews of Europe and sought support to take similar measures with the Jews in Arab lands. At the beginning of April 1941, Haj Amin al-Husseini and Dr. Grober encouraged the Golden Square colonels to stage a coup in Iraq that overthrew the pro-British government of Prime Minister Nouri al-Said and brought to power Rashid Ali al-Gailani, a Nazi sympathizer who immediately re-established relation with Nazi Germany and sought Nazi help against Britain. While the Germans supported Rashid Ali's regime and looked forward to oil supplies from Iraq, they were unable to prevent British forces from retaking the country before the end of May 1941. Although Dr. Grober, al-Husseini and Rashid Ali fled Iraq, they had already initiated anti-Jewish measures, including the marking of Jewish homes with red handprints to make them easily identifiable, and plans to round up the Jews of Baghdad had been commenced, though fortunately these were thwarted when the ringleaders fled. After fleeing Iraq, Rashid Ali and Sheikh Amin al-Husseini found sanctuary in Germany as guests of Hitler. The Mufti cooperated with the Nazis, helping to recruit a Bosnian Muslim SS battalion, and continued inciting Arabs against Jews by broadcasting in Arabic from Germany. Rashid Ali joined in with similar anti-Semitic broadcasts to the Arab world. In 1941, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, commander of Germany's Afrika Korps, and often referred to as the Desert Fox, was having success after success in his military sweep through North Africa, which created further dangers to the Jews of the region. With the expectation that he would conquer Egypt and then go on to Palestine, an Einsatzgruppe Egypt battalion was organized and stationed in Greece, set to kill off the Jews in Egypt and the 500,000 Jews in Palestine, expecting help from locals who had been incited against the Jews. At the time, with the invasion of Russia, Nazis plotted to sweep down from there to finish off the Jews in Turkey, Iran, and Iraq. Fortunately, Rommel's progress was checked by the battalion of El Alamein, and the dire consequences for the Jews of the region did not eventuate. Was this the result of a miracle, and did the Iraqi Kabbalists have a role in bringing it about? The rabbi in question was Chacham Yehuda Fataya, known for his power as an exorcist, whose magical or mystical powers were legendary. In a recent article, Professor Mark Verman of Wright University records that Fataya persuaded the British authorities in Palestine to afford him the services of a fighter plane and a pilot to execute his plan, which came to be known as the Circle of Blood. In the summer of 42, Rommel and his Afrika Korps seemed unstoppable as they moved through North Africa and were poised to sweep all the way through Egypt to the Suez Canal and beyond into the land of Israel. According to the report, the Irish pilot directly involved in the incident, according to him, Fataya persuaded the Royal Air Force in Palestine to allow him the use of a pilot and plane in order to perform a magical ceremony of protection against the advancing Nazi army. He instructed the pilot to fly a large circle around southern Israel, including parts of Egypt, while he and his two colleagues, thereby constituting a Beth Din, a rabbinic court, performed a version of kaparot, the traditional slaughtering of a chicken performed prior to Yom Kippur. The following is from the pilot's account. The cargo consisted of 3 very old rabbis, whose followers proceeded to load aboard a great number of metal cages containing white chickens. The flight plan called for a track down the coast of Palestine and Egypt, turning south at Alexandria and heading for the southern tip of the Suez Canal, refueling and going on to Aqaba and along the Jordan River back to Jerusalem. Since the chicken's blood was to be sprinkled along the route, a loading hatch was removed and a cargo net was rigged across the aperture to stop stray rabbis cascading down. All the while, the rabbis, by now covered in chicken's blood by courtesy of the slipstream, were singing psalms, chanting prayers, cutting chicken throats, and squeezing the blood out of the hatch. Back at the Jerusalem airstrip, the boss rabbi gave each of us 2 crisp Palestine pound notes. For beer, they suggested. Real blood money. They looked aside. Shortly afterwards, Rommel attacked, and the lads in the mess used to kid us. Fat lot of good those chickens of yours have done, they'd say, and stuff like that. But they weren't wrong. It was Rommel's last fling. 3 weeks later came Monty's advance from El Alamein. Mind you, I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't flown the mission myself. So, was it Field Marshal Montgomery, commander of British troops in North Africa's military skills, which was responsible for stopping the German advance? Or was he given some supernatural support through Chacham Yehuda Fatayah's efforts? We may never know, but it is nice to think that a Baghdadi rabbi could have prevented the Jews across the Middle East facing the devastation that Baghdadi Jews suffered in the Farhud.
Al-Farhud, the Holocaust. It's by Jabbar Jamal ad-Din. Al-Manasseh. يا يوم واقعة الفرهود أي أسى رأيته فيك يا دهرا من السجن لأنت صفحة تاريخ ملونة بلبوس والعار حتى آخر الزمن مزقت هذا الشعب وانطفلت فيك الشموع وغاب السحر في الفن وقوم ذي الكفل قد ريعوا بلا سبب وهم طليعات أهل العدل والسنن من حزقيال كريمة نفوسهم وحسون بلا من وبلا ثمن إذا تصفحت آثار الشعوب تجد آثارهم من تخون الصين لليمن سيان عندي دمع عند نسويتم ودمع نسوتنا اتهان كالعزن دار لشاول قد ضاعت محاسنها ودار روبين أضلا بلامون لولا الفنون وما صاروا من ألق ما أشع نور الضحي في الشاطئ الحسن عجبت كيف جموع البغى قد زحفت لذبح ذلك الندي المغروس في الوطن انتباع موسى وأنتم رغم محنتكم نفوسكم لم ترع يوما ولا تهن إذاكم من به نحلا وموجدا تفر على من مرار الذهل والأحن. ورغم ذلك الذي للآن شامخة تلك الحبال ولا ولا تلن. إن يحرق الدار عزرا في محلتنا ففاره لم تزل الآن تحرق فيه. والحكاك في حزن دموعهم مازا يلعنوا بالجلاد والوثن. ومثلهم القزاز وقد فجعوا يشكون الله ما لاقه من محن. ما باع حق لكم مهما تنازما يلصف الخنق من نجد اليمن. ويا شموئيل يا سامي الوفاء ومن لولاه لم تكن أشعار ولم أكن. باقى على العهد بالحنة ردده والهجر فوق بين الجفن والوسن. هيات هيات أن أسلو محبتكم لأنها مثل فرض خط في السن.
I'm going to translate the poem that was just read. The Farhud, the Forgotten Holocaust, by A.D. Jabbar Jamal Ed-Din. On the day of the Farhud, what grief, a lifetime it felt of hurt running deep. A contaminated page wedged in the book of history, of shame, of horror and great misery. The Farhud ripped us apart and our unity was torn. The light of love extinguished where it was born. The people of the Prophet, Dhu el-Kifli, were terrified. The people of honor and justice were sacrificed. Generosity, a trait of Ezekiel, they learnt. They offer with no expectations to return favors earned. Their tracks extend from China to Yemen, tracks and traces of people in history left behind. I dread their women's cries, as I dread our women's tears. They pour like rain and fall like streams. Shaul's abode has lost its beauty, and Reuben's home is in ruins. If it weren't for their art and talent, no morning lights would have emerged alongside the beautiful shoreline. I am astonished at the group of cowards trooping to smash the jewel of the nation, marching to wipe out the Jew on carnations. Despite the hardship, the people of Moses never bowed to anyone. Despite the harm inflicted, those proud heads never bowed, never accepted those cowards' damnation. The burning flames of Ezra's home in our neighborhood still burn in my heart, ready for immolation. You, the good people of the family of Al-Khazaz and Al-Haq, wipe away your tears of sorrow. Your rights will never vanish. Regardless of distance and time, from our heart you will never banish. You are the purest form of mankind. From China to Yemen, survivors of injustice, survivors of crime. Oh, Samuel, the symbol of faithfulness. Without you, my poetry would never have seen the light. You are the song in my head that I repeat over and over again in longing for you and how we parted, that separation that kept the eyelash away from slumber. For you, I promise, never shall I forget your love, never shall I forget my love for you. It is my path, deeply inscribed for me to follow. Thank you.
וכל מעשינו בספר נכתבים, הם נכתבים
כהתחלה של יום אביב שקוף, ריחות מתוקים, בצק אלים, שירה. ילד קטן קסום בנפש ובגוף, זה חג אהבה, חג מתן תורה. אביו יצחק מפזר ממתקים, מרבה תורה, מרבה חיים, הלומד מחכים. שלהבת נותרה מן הלילה, בוקר שכולו צמאון. היום ילך עם אביו לבקר בקברי הקדושים, יום בלהות, מדבר, מדבר קופח, לילות ארוכים, שני אחים גדולים נותרו ללא קבר. אביו ואמו של הילד משה, בוכים ומחשים, בוכים מול שלהבת ושני מתים קדושים. האחים שלך הלכו בחג התורה ללמוד, ונסרק גופם וכובדה נשמתם בחרב נאצית, מוסלמית, אל יהוד, אל מות. האחים שלו תורתם הכל בדם. ואביו הביט בעשן השלהבת, ואמו כחשה. שניהם לאיתם קווים, וכל מעשיהם, וכל המעשים וכל השתיקות בספר נכתבים. There's another two one, the bit short.
One at a time. Let it translate so that they get a sense of it. So that was affirmed by Herzl Hapart, and now let's hear Sheila with the translation.
Dried Leaves, Tombs of Holy Men by Herzl Hakak. And all that we do is written in the book. They are written as the beginning of a day. Of spring, translucent, sweet smells, puff pastry, shira. Small child, magical in body and soul. It is a festival of love, the festival of Matan Torah. His father Yitzhak distributes sweets. Much Torah lengthens life. He who learns increases in knowledge. A flame remains from the night, a morning full of thirst. Today he will go with his father to visit tombs of holy men. A day of horror, wilderness strikes, long nights, the nights are long. Two older brothers remain tombless. Father and mother of the child Moses are weeping and whispering, weeping in front of a flame and two dead holy men. Your brothers went in the festival to learn the Torah, and their bodies were smashed and their souls cut off in the Nazi Muslim sword. Death to the Jews! His brothers, their Torah covered in blood, and his father stared at the flame smoke, and his mother was worn down. Both slowly fade away, and all their deeds and silence are written in the book.
Second poem. אמי מרתיחה סוכר בשקדים. ריח נעים של מי ורדים, מזלי שאני מחכה לזיכרונותיי בנועם, היחיד בעולם התואם אותם. הנה השקדים הקטושים נמהלים במי סוכר רותחים. אמי מכינה לוזינה לבנה להולדת הילדים, שני תאומים אחים, שני אחיה עבדו בפרעות תש"א. גם החכם לא ידע למצוא ברוחות היכן אותם הרוח נשא, ושפתיו יצקו. לא תקראי לבנייך התאומים בשמות אחייך העובדים. אולי חיים, אולי ברחו אל 10 השבטים. אמא מוסיפה מי ורדים, מעט הל מפזרת, שופכת סוכר קרוש בתווך, חותכת בשני אלכסונים, כאילו דלקו נרות, כאילו יום הסנה. אמא מכינה לוזינה לבנה, אוהבת הייתה, כך אמרה להביט בשפתי תאומיה הרקים. גובנם יפה כצוואריה פרחים, יבש בגבנה, האם רוח אחיה באה בבניה. האם שוסעו צוואריהם במאכלות רוצחים, ידיה אמונות על הלוזינה, מרתיחה מורידה מן האש, שמה שקדים מערבבת קוטשת. לחיי יבשות כאילו הסכינה, האם הל דמעותיה נמס עם האש הלוחשת. שני תאומים נולדו, עיניהם סוכר ושקדים, ובאוויר העמדת הפנים, לא נשכחת מי ורדים.
My mother boils sugar with almonds by Herzl Hakak. A pleasant smell of rose water. Fortunately, I wait pleasantly for my memories, the only one that matches them. Here are the almonds. The slivers are diluted in sugar water that is boiling. My mother prepares white luzina for the birth of the children. 2 twin brothers. Her 2 brothers perished in the riots of 1941. Even the wise man could not find from the spirits to where the wind had carried them, and his lips cast out. You shall not call your twins in the name of your lost brothers. Perhaps they are alive. Perhaps they ran away to the 10 tribes. Mother adds rose water, a little cardamom, sprinkles, pours jellied sugar inside, cuts into diagonals. As candles were lit as the anniversary, Mother prepares white luzina. She loved, so she said, to watch the lips of her tender twins, its shade beautiful like the stems of the flowers. Dryness in her body. Has the spirit of her brothers entered her sons? Have their throats been slashed by murderers' knives? Her hands adapted to the luzina boils, removes from the fire, puts almonds, stirs, crushes. Her cheeks are dry as if she is adapted to it. Is the cardamom of her tears dissolving with the burning fire? 2 twins are born, their eyes sugar and almonds, and in the air the presence is not forgotten. Rose water. From the Forgotten Document, 1987.
Anwar Shaul was an Iraqi Jew, born in 1904, who played an active role in the affairs of the Jewish community and in the life of the wider Iraqi society, which he dearly loved. In his time, he was a journalist, the owner and editor of a literary journal, a poet and short story writer, and a lawyer with a strong sense of social justice. He campaigned in both the Jewish and wider society against child marriage, oppressive dowry demands, better conditions for the peasant farmers or fellahin, and honor killings. His ideas were considered radical in his time, and twice his journals were shut down by the authorities. Shaul was a staunch Iraqi patriot who supported the Hashemite monarchy while at the same time resenting the extensive role the British colonial masters played in the life of the country even after its independence in 1932. Having had the benefit of a modern education, he sought to share the ideals and the fruits of the Enlightenment with his less privileged countrymen. Although he was a proud Jew and a one-time member of the Jewish Communal Council, at the same time he wrote critically of the Zionist movement and saw the place of Iraqi Jews as firmly grounded in a modern, democratic Iraq. His was an optimistic outlook, exhibiting pride in his Jewish past and Iraq's role as the cradle of civilization, and confidence in its future as a democratic state. Shaul's feelings for his country was highlighted by one of his most famous poems, Shaded by the Followers of Muhammad, written in praise of Iraq, which included these famous lines. Though it be from Moses that I draw my faith, yet I live shaded by the followers of Muhammad. The tolerance of Islam is my salvation, the wisdom of the Quran my inspiration. My love for the people of Muhammad has never diminished, even as I cleave to the faith of Moses. In times of joy and in sorrow, I shall always be faithful to my homeland. Like Shaul, most Jews in Iraq identified with the nation, spoke in Arabic, and were conscious of the fact that they had lived for over 2,600 years, and the community prospered in the first half of the 20th century. However, from the 1930s, Nazi propaganda was having an effect on their relations with their non-Jewish fellow citizens. And the growth of the Jewish settlement in Palestine was causing outrage among many Arabs who took the resentment out on the local Jewish community. These conditions culminated in the devastating Farhud of 1941. But after peace was restored, the government sought to reassure its Jewish community that the Farhud had been a one-off aberration and they should feel safe in the country. The situation deteriorated once again following Israel's declaration of independence and the failure of the combined Arab armies to crush the nascent state. Although a number of Jews were arrested and jailed or hung on trumped-up charges, the declaration of martial law protected the community from widespread attack, while additional restrictions were placed on the Jews who were not permitted to leave the country. Thousands of Jews sought to escape from Iraq, being smuggled across the border to Iran. Those who were caught or whose smugglers proved treacherous often ended up being murdered. In 1950, the government gave Jews who wanted to leave 12 months to do so, on the understanding that they would be stripped of their citizenship and never allowed to return. Despite their attachment to Iraq, conditions had become unbearable, and some 130,000 chose to leave, whereas only around 10,000 remained. Over time, conditions continued to deteriorate following the violent overthrow of the monarchy and a succession of bloody coups, culminating in the rise to power of the Ba'ath Party and Saddam Hussein's brutal grip on the country. The remaining Jews, presumably with stronger attachments to the country, were not honoured for their patriotism. Reports of families being butchered in their homes were commonplace, as was the unexplained disappearance of members of the community. People were arrested as communists for possessing 19th century Russian novels, or as Zionists for owning a New Hebrew prayer book or receiving a letter from a relative in Israel. Another prominent Jewish writer and lawyer who had not left Iraq, Meir had been arrested arbitrarily, and Shaul made representations on his behalf. After the poem that we saw earlier was read out on television, Salih al-Mahdi, the regime's second command, was impressed by its sentiments and acceded to Shaul's representations for his friend's release. Yet the level of hatred against Jews can be seen by the supposedly accidental misprinting of one word in Shaul's poem in one journal. So that instead of reading, "Though it be from Moses that I draw my faith," it came out as from Moses I draw my faith, wretched is my creed. Conditions for Jews who had stayed on in the country reached a particularly low point when in January 1969, 14 people were hanged in the public square for allegedly spying for Israel. There was a festive air about the hangings. The government had urged citizens to come and watch the spectacle, which turned into a public celebration with 500,000 people coming out and chanting, "Death to the traitors, death to Israel." By this time, the boldness evident in Shaul's early writings, the optimism that the problems of the world could be put right through cooperative effort, and the crusading zeal expended in the cause of justice gave way to a more somber perspective, suggesting disillusionment and realization that his dream of equality for all in an Arabic Iraqi nation would never be achieved. After the hangings and the increased restrictions imposed on Jews, Shaul found circumstances in Iraq no longer tolerable. As he so eloquently put the matter in his memoirs, "I did the sums and the figures added up to zero." One can discern the anguish and the disillusionment in the following brief poem which he wrote to express his feelings when he finally departed from his beloved homeland in 1971. "Take away my thoughts and my hopes of a lifetime. Take all the scattered jewels that shine as brightly as the stars. Take the honey from my bees and the wine from my cup. Take the produce of my orchard, the flowers and the seeds. Take all that I own, but leave me my freedom." Shaul's work faithfully captures the concerns, the hopes, and the dreams that Iraqi Jewry entertained in the first half of the 20th century, and the dashing of those hopes, which Shaul was, perhaps more slowly and reluctantly than most of the members of his community, eventually forced to acknowledge. Iraq, as it has developed since the mid-20th century, no longer had a place for the Jews, had for centuries been an integral strand in the fabric of the nation. Thank you.
We mark much more than a tragic loss of life. Today we mark the end of a glorious history that spanned over 2,000 years, 10 decades, over 1,000 years, where Iraq was the seat of scholarship, where Torah was taught through its house of studies and prayer to the whole world, to the whole Jewish world. And the Farhud marks the end of the glorious Jewish history that spans so many decades in the land of Iraq. And if that is not sad enough, then today marks the disappointment of the fellow that you had bred the day before, your friend who turned your enemy overnight. On the rebuilding, the strength and the courage of the Jewish people. And it is this strength and courage that carries us forth from place to place and from generation to generation. I wish you all a good night.